Most of us grew up learning that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. But is that the whole story? What if I told you he never set foot in what we now call the United States? This episode of Midnight Oil. Today we're doing Christopher Columbus. Did you ever, like back when you were in school, right, learning about Christopher Columbus? What did you learn? Because I didn't learn a whole bunch. For some reason, it's ingrained in my head the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Something about him discovering something. The American education system is actually garbage. At least the
Flawed.
public school system is. It's really bad. I learned the most useless information, and the useful information or the most important I have just completely forgotten. Maybe that's a little bit my fault, but I'm gonna blame the school system.
That's fair enough, honestly. I didn't learn too much about him though, other than I'm sure that there was like a whole subject class on him. Like we probably had a whole day because obviously, we have Columbus Day. Yay. But yeah, I didn't learn too much, or at least I don't recall too much, other than the fact that he discovered America. Air quotes around that because he very much didn't, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, speaking of that, so usually during stories of Christopher Columbus, you hear, he went out, sailed the ocean blue in 1492. He had the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, discovered America, whatever. That's not what we're talking about. Why don't you tell them what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy theories around Christopher Columbus and what he was actually sailing out to do. And that ranges from maybe he was looking for Atlantis, or maybe he was using biological warfare, or a bunch of other different things. And so that's what we're going to get into today because we're not here to talk about Christopher Columbus in any sort of way about discovering America.
But the cool thing about this whole thing is that you don't have to listen to all of the heebie jeebie lingo of, oh, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Nah, he discovered Atlantis, and we're going to talk about why he did that.
Yeah.
We also, like, there's conspiracies about his birthplace, like
Mm-hmm.
where he's from. We were doing research before the episode, which we don't. Okay, this is the first midweek episode.
It's a second.
Second, that's right. We did one last week. We're doing these midweek episodes, right? And we were doing research, and we were like, man, we're gonna do Christopher Columbus, right? And then you can put two and two together and figure out what we might be talking about for the main episode. But we went down a rabbit hole, and
Yeah.
and we were like, why make it serious, right? It doesn't matter. Christopher Columbus is kind of garbo, so why don't we just kind of take it off the rails a little bit, dip our toe into some different what do you want to call them? Different stories of Christopher Columbus, the untold stories of Christopher Columbus.
Yeah. I like that. That has a ring to it.
Ring 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 ring.
Hello?
It's the good ring that you heard.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Anyways, tell them what conspiracies there are, or
Yeah,
what
so
do we call it? Are they conspiracies?
they could be called conspiracies, rumors, and speculations.
Okay,
Yeah, I feel.
I
But to
agree.
kick us off, so there's been apparently a debate about where he's from. I guess he used to try to claim that he was from Italy, specifically Genoa, Italy. But there's been alternative theories that suggest that he was potentially Spanish or Portuguese or even Catalan. Yeah. But some researchers proposed that he was a Sephardic Jew from Valencia, Spain. And that
Mm.
can be like traced back to he was really chasing royalty, I guess, from his heritage or something along those lines. And he also was trying to hide his Jewish ancestry to avoid persecution during the Spanish Inquisition. So that's like, was he actually from Spain or was he from Italy?
Mm. I wanna kind of butt in here. So Christopher Columbus was a very well-read kind of guy, at least for his time, because he was kind of like a higher up. He had connections, right? So he had access to some ancient texts that included works by Plato. And if you guys have listened to our Atlantis episode, you know where this might be going. Plato kind of described Atlantis, and I won't say he created it, but he pretty much did. He was pulling everyone's leg. It was really lackluster. But some people speculate that Christopher Columbus might have believed Atlantis existed in the Atlantic Ocean from reading those texts, and that his voyage westward was partially inspired by the idea of finding different remains of this mystical location. And I was like, the second I read that, I was like, we got to go a different direction with Christopher Columbus. This dude is reading Plato and is believing it. So, I mean, and back then, right? It was different. Facts worked different. You can't just Google something. Like you had to have read it in a book. And, if you find a treasure map these days, what are the odds that someone else hasn't also already saw that treasure map and seen the treasure, right? With all of this technology we have. But back then, in the 1400s, you didn't really have, like, you didn't have GPS, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have any of that. You relied on books. So it was much more believable back then that Atlantis existed than it would be now. The reason that he sailed out was because many Atlantis theories place the lost civilization in the Atlantic Ocean, which really aligns with Columbus's route to the New World, where some theorists also claim the Caribbean islands or the regions of the Americas Columbus discovered were also remains of Atlantis. So I was like, whoa, pause.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Piggybacking off of Atlantis, there was a rumor that he was searching for actually the land of Ophir, that was in the Bible. And that would kind of go hand in hand with him trying to spread the word of Christianity. That was like the original story. And Ophir it's an unidentified region famous in the Old Testament times for its fine gold. So he was
Mm.
looking for that potentially as well as Atlantis.
So before we get super deep into the conspiracy, do we know what he was looking for? Like, isn't that documented? Like, quote unquote, he was looking for?
Like what he actually was looking for?
Yeah, because I thought originally he was documented seeking like a new trade route to Asia, and that was the point of his voyages.
Yeah. So it was something to do with the fact that I think the trade routes got cut off where he was at. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was like, "All right, yo, we got to figure this out." So he went to look towards like Asia and Japan and over there, but then he ended up stumbling upon America, I guess. He went the wrong way, basically.
No, Atlantis.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. My bad. He found Atlantis.
And he learned bubble speak.
Yes. Blah, 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 blah.
So the cool thing about this theory is that there's not any historical evidence of it, but it aligns very well with the location he went to, his ideals. He read a bunch of stuff, a bunch of different historic texts, and specifically of Plato's. So it's not that far fetched to think that he was a curious guy and wanted to maybe check something out on the way.
Yeah. It was also rumored that he had secret ties to the Knights of Templar. So his whole voyage was kind of influenced by secret societies and stuff like that related to the Knights of Templar. But there's actually no evidence on that. It's just kind of people theorizing.
Theorizing about like having connections to them.
Yeah.
Mm,
that like his
okay.
voyages were influenced by them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he was very much like an ancient myths buff. He was really into these like different mythologies, different historic stories, and that leads me to kind of like question maybe he was trying to like link evidence between Atlantis and, something from his past that he read through one of Plato's texts. Because you have to also think, because Plato was thousands of years before this, right? It was like 2000 years prior. It was like 900 BC or something. Oh no, Plato
Something like that.
was around in 427 BCE. So yeah, about almost 2000 years old. So, yeah, maybe Columbus was like, "Hey, I have access to these ships. Hey, I have a crew. Let's go find these sea people."
That's actually really funny though, because if we're thinking about Atlantis, there's actual text in his cute little book that he carried around, his journal, I guess. He was talking about sea creatures and writing about sea monsters and stuff like that. But it's commonly thought that he was probably just misidentifying marine life,
Mm.
but maybe he saw the people of Atlantis
So
and he was
the
like,
cool thing
"Whoa,
about that
I found it."
was we have portions or have seen portions of Columbus's journal, which he referred to usually as like his logbook or diary, and some of it has survived to this day. And there's a transcription and summary made by Bartolome de las Casas. I probably butchered that, who was a Spanish priest and historian, where the original journal was lost, but Las Casas account provides insights into Columbus's thoughts, observations, and experiences during his first voyage in 1492, which is kind of cool. So we have a little bit of the ye old Columbus writing.
Yeah. Back onto his writing, if we're talking about his little journal. Apparently, on October 11th, 1492, he mentions that there were strange lights in the sky, which some people interpreted as
Mm.
like UFOs. And I just think that's crazy that, like, even back in 1492, the UFOs were flying around. Like, they're just that much more advanced than we are. It's crazy to think about.
He said he saw a light that appeared to move up and down, resembling a small candle or torch, but way in the distance. And it was noticed by other people on the ship, but like that suggests that it wasn't just his imagination because they had other people that did, as at least they say, saw it,
Yeah.
which is crazy because it could have been a bunch of different things, but maybe a campfire, and they're trying to figure out that I think they already know the earth is curved at this point, but it could have looked like it was up in the sky because of the curvature of the earth. It could have looked like some kind of bioluminescence. It could have looked like some astrology phenomenon, some atmospheric phenomena. It could have been a bunch of different stuff that they just weren't educated enough for, so they were like, "Whoa, there's a light in the sky."
Maybe it was when they passed through the Bermuda Triangle.
That's right. Yeah, maybe the Atlanteans were just trying to get in contact with them, and they shot one of their sea flares up or something.
The sea players. Nah. Oh, that's funny.
So, according to the interwebs, the allure of Atlantis led some people to speculate about connections between Columbus's discoveries and Atlantis. For instance, in the 16th century, historian Pedro Sarmiento de Gamboa suggested that the Americas might be remnants of Atlantis, proposing that the continent stretched from near the Strait of Gibraltar, remember that, westward to include parts of the New World. So it was like really close
Hmm.
to where Christopher Columbus was en route on the ship, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I
So like
mean,
it
it was right in the whenever we looked at that map while we were talking about Atlantis, it was right in the middle, like smack dab in the middle between America and kind of towards Europe, Asia. Or Europe, Africa.
It's just so crazy. That's the stuff they should be teaching in school.
For real.
The unknown explorations of Christopher Columbus and Atlantis. What about like the secret knowledge of the New World? Did you see any of that?
The secret knowledge of like
There was a claim that some theorists believed Columbus had prior knowledge of the Americas before his voyage
oh.
through his ancient maps and secret documents that he had.
Yeah, I mean that would check out.
There's evidence cited for this. So, like maps, the Pyrie Reis map, drawn in 1513, was said to depict parts of the Americas before Columbus's time. Stories of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact by the Vikings, I think you talked about before we started recording, but also other ancient civilizations. But people are a little skeptic, like scholars. They argue Columbus miscalculated the Earth's size and thought he was heading to Asia, not an unknown continent.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So that's what because I swear that's like one of the main prominent things that I remember when we're calling Christopher Columbus is that he was actually heading towards Asia, or he was trying to discover something, but then he actually hit Asia rather than hit America. But then the rest of the history didn't line up, so I was like confused about it. Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? Because, you got Atlantis, you got discovering different parts of Asia, the Americas, the Straits of Gibraltar, like Christopher Columbus he's documented being in many different strange places, seeing many different strange things. Just the last part about Atlantis is he was influenced by ancient legends from Plato. And the reason for that was because of his religious and like mystical mindset, believing he was part of this divine mission. Because Christopher Columbus kind of had this like I don't want to call it like out of body feeling, but he felt like he yearned more for the world. So his exploration of the islands in the Caribbean, speculated by some, were to be the remains of Atlantis, which is what inevitably is what holds the water in the theory, because he was in that area, and he was super into the mythology of it, and he just was like, oh, maybe I'm going to discover what Plato once told from his teachings. But at that point, Christopher Columbus read ancient texts with no evidence that suggests he was actively searching for Atlantis. So.
Wait, okay. And to piggyback off of you still talking about the maps and the secret knowledge that it existed.
Oh, yes.
We're going to circle back to the Knights of Templar for a second. So, to dive a little more into that theory, it's rumored that the Knights of Templar hid their Holy Grail or their ancient religious artifacts in this place called Oak Island. And what Oak Island is, it's just this place in Nova Scotia, Canada. It's known as the site of one of the longest running treasure hunts in history. The legend suggests that the island holds buried treasure there, hidden artifacts, or even ancient secrets. So if we go back to his ties with the Knights of Templar, this is where he fits into all of that. It's rumored that his ancient maps and texts were from the Templar or early explorers that had interactions with the Knights of Templar, and the maps most likely hinted at treasures or the sacred sites in the New World, which at the time was considered Nova Scotia, Canada. And so, if he had access to that secret knowledge, then it's theorized that those maps that he had could have indicated Oak Island as a hiding place for all of the treasures. And it also ties into the fact that he was looking for riches and holy land, spreading the gospel kind of thing. So it would kind of add up. And something cool that I also found out about Oak Island is that there's like a legend that 7 people must die before the treasure is found. To date, 6 treasure hunters have reportedly died already. Don't mean to laugh, but like, how do you do that? Like, how do you just die while looking for treasure? That would suck.
So I'll also piggyback. I don't usually piggyback like that, but this is really interesting. So the Knights of Templar had a red cross as their symbol, and it was because of their connection to the church and whatnot. But the reason that that people think this theory holds water is because of the red cross on the sails of Christopher Columbus's ship, specifically the Santa Maria, is all often cited as evidence of Templar influence because they look almost identical. So supporters claim this cross resembles the Templar cross, suggesting a connection to the dissolved order. So you can do what you wish with that information, but the symbols are very clearly identical to each other. And it could just be a coincidence that the sails of Columbus's ship were a common Christian symbol at the time that were used widely in crusades and sanctioned by Spain. But it's kind of crazy. They're exactly the same.
It's also in his journal and letters. They contain like secret hidden symbols and codes pointing to him having this secret knowledge and potentially relating to Oak Island or other treasure sites that he was looking for. And some of the Oak Island treasure hunters have speculated that some of the artifacts that they found on or near the island, such as like old coins and like tools and stuff, actually date back to Columbus's time or maybe even earlier.
Yep. So, Tab, what do you think is the most believable of the conspiracies that we've went over?
So personally, I want to say the Knights of Templar thing kind of adds up for me in terms of the flag and the ancient maps, and he was chasing riches, all that. It kind of just it clicks. And maybe he also stumbled upon Atlantis.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely went to Atlantis, right?
Had to
Well,
have.
well. Christopher Columbus, Vikings, Atlantis. Wait. Damn it, I don't know if the Viking thing made it in.
I don't know if we talked about Vikings.
No. Okay. Well, to you guys, we were talking about for about 10 minutes on how we could link the Vikings and Christopher Columbus together. But apparently that didn't happen.
It wasn't
in
meant to
this
be.
It wasn't meant to be. So rip my conspiracy theory on Christopher Columbus being a former Viking and having his red hair. So
That's funny.
wrap this shit up. God damn it. It's always something.
I swear. Yeah, that's all for today.
If you like this episode of Midnight Oil, give us a follow, give us a review, perhaps
Yeah.
on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Give us a follow on Instagram too. We're at 14 followers, and I am tired of seeing that number. So either unfollow us or follow us. It doesn't matter which. I just don't want to keep seeing 14. And follow us on BlueSky as well. We are not Midnight Oil Entertainment on BlueSky, though. We are Midnight Oil Podcast because entertainment would not fit. But yeah, it was a good episode. Tab, do you have anything?
Yeah. So our Patreon, you can find us at Midnight Oil Podcast on Patreon. That's where we do all of our pre-shows and hidden projects. But yeah, and speaking about Patreon, we got to do our Patreon shout-outs. So shout out to Zaid/Agrode. You can find him on twitch.tv/Agrode with a 0. And then shout out to Dakota, that's Keek's partner. And then shout out to me.
That's right. Tab, our newest Patreon member.
I swear.
But
Solid supporter.
yeah, go check out the Patreon. Thank you to the Patreon supporters and enjoy the shenanigans uncut episode of this because
This is
boy.
a mess.
And we're going to see you guys on Friday. Gobble, gobble.
Gobble gobble. Good night.